Picture this. You're 7 years old, sitting in Mrs. Henderson's third grade classroom. Your bladder's screaming at you. You need to go. Badly. But you can't just get up and handle it like the capable human being you are. No, no, no. You've got to raise your hand, wait for permission, ask another adult if you're allowed to use your own body the way nature intended. And here's the twisted part. You didn't question it, did you? None of us did. Fast forward 20 years, you're sitting in a corporate office and you've got an idea that could revolutionize the entire project you're working on. But instead of just executing it, you're scheduling a meeting to pitch it to your manager, who'll pitch it to their manager, who'll probably take credit for it anyway. You're still raising your hand, brother, still waiting for permission. Still that same 7-year-old kid who couldn't trust himself to know when he needed to take a piss. Now here's where it gets really interesting and a little dark. That's not an accident. That's not just how society works. That's engineering. Precision-crafted psychological conditioning that's been perfected over centuries. And the man who decoded this game? Niccolo Machiavelli. Yeah, the guy everyone thinks wrote the villain's handbook. Turns out he was actually writing the blueprint for how the powerful keep you powerless. See, Machiavelli said something that should make your blood run cold. The vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. Harsh? Maybe. But here's what he really understood. Those in power don't just benefit from your ignorance. They actively cultivate it. They need you small. They need you obedient. They need you raising your hand. Because here's the secret they don't want you figuring out. You weren't born broken. You were broken intentionally. Let's get real about how deep this rabbit hole goes. From the moment you could form sentences, you were trained like a circus animal. Speak when spoken to, ask before acting, wait for the green light from whoever's holding the leash today. School was your first prison, and it was designed that way. Think about it. You had to ask permission to speak your thoughts, to move your body, to fulfill basic biological functions. Every natural impulse you had was treated like a problem that needed management, not a resource that needed development. They weren't educating you, man. They were domesticating you. And it worked, didn't it? Because now you're an adult who feels guilty making big decisions without consulting the tribe. You got this nagging voice in your head asking, but what will they think? Should I run this by someone first? Is it okay if I just do what I want with my own life? That voice, that's not wisdom, that's programming. Machiavelli understood this game from the inside. He knew that rulers don't want citizens, they want subjects. People who look outward for direction instead of inward for power. People who've forgotten they were born with an internal compass and spent their whole lives asking others where north is. The workplace perfected what school started. Every corporate structure is designed to make you dependent on approval. You learn to present your ideas tentatively, wrapped in diplomatic language that basically translates to, please don't fire me for having a thought. You frame your initiative as collaboration because, God forbid, you look like you're capable of independent achievement. The guy who acts decisively, he gets labeled difficult. The woman who speaks with certainty, she's not a team player. Is genius, really, diabolical genius. Because here's what this system does. It creates a supply of permission seekers who are desperately looking for commanders. And brother, there is no shortage of people ready to command you. They're lined up around the block, waiting to tell you how to live, what to think, where to work, what to buy, who to vote for, what to believe. Machiavelli nails it. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. But the flip side is darker. He who seeks to be commanded will find commanders everywhere. And once you're in that headspace, you're done. You're a chess piece, not a player. Now let's talk about the most seductive lie they ever told you. Safety comes from blending in. Stay in your lane. Don't rock the boat. Color inside the lines. Follow the proven path. Be agreeable. Be predictable. Be forgettable. And somehow, magically, you'll be safe. Except you won't. You know what conformity actually gives you? Vulnerability disguised as security. It makes you completely dependent on systems that don't give a damn about you. The safe corporate job that lays you off when the quarterly numbers look bad. The conventional investment strategy that implodes when the market does what conventional wisdom said it couldn't. The normal path that leads exactly where everyone else is going. which is usually straight off a cliff, lemming style. Machiavelli said something that sounds brutal but is actually liberating. It is far safer to be feared than loved. Now, before you run off thinking he wants you to become a tyrant, think about what he's really saying. He's talking about distinctiveness versus disposability. The person who blends in completely, they're always one decision away from being replaced, overlooked, made irrelevant. They have no leverage because they've made themselves interchangeable. The person who's distinctive, capable, a little bit dangerous in the best way, they've got options, they've got power, they've got actual security, the kind that comes from being valuable, not from being invisible. School trains you to give teachers the answers they want instead of developing your own thinking. Career counselors funnel you into conventional paths based on your test scores, as if life is a sorting algorithm and you're just data to be processed. They're not serving your interests, man. They're serving institutional needs. They need predictable graduates who fill predictable roles and not ask too many unpredictable questions. But here's the twist. The people who actually succeeded in creating the lives they wanted, they're the ones who said, screw the approved path and built something new. Every single innovation, every business that changed the game, every artistic movement that mattered, it came from someone who refused to conform. The myth of safety through conformity serves one purpose, keeping you manageable. And you know who benefits from you being manageable? Everyone except you. Here's where it gets even more twisted. They didn't just teach you to seek permission and blend in. They taught you to worship at the altar of credentials, titles, and institutional positions, regardless of whether the people holding those positions deserve your respect. This is authority worship, and it's one of the smoothest cons ever pulled. Think about how this works in real time. Some guy has DR in front of his name, and suddenly you're supposed to accept everything he says without question, even if his track record is garbage. Someone's got the title CEO, so their decisions must be wise, even when they're clearly tanking the company. Politicians get elected, and we're supposed to defer to their judgment, even when they've been wrong about literally everything for the last decade. Machiavelli had a razor-sharp litmus test for this. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. In other words, real authority comes from results and wisdom, not from titles and positions. But we've been trained to skip that evaluation. We've been trained to submit first and think later, if at all. Education hammers this into you early. Teachers are authorities because they're teachers, not because they've demonstrated knowledge worth respecting. You learn to accept information based on who said it, not whether it's actually true or useful. This creates adults who outsource their thinking to anyone with a fancy credential, which is exactly the point. Professional environments keep this going with hierarchy worship. The org chart becomes holy scripture. The person above you on the ladder must know better, must be smarter, must be worth deferring to, even when everything they touch turns to shit. Political systems run entirely on authority worship. Without it, incompetent leadership would be exposed immediately. But here's the real mind bender. The alternative isn't rejecting all expertise, it's developing your own judgment. It's learning to evaluate claims based on evidence and results, not source credentials. It's having the confidence to say, I don't care what your title is, show me why you're right. That kind of independence, it's dangerous to them, not to you, because once you stop automatically deferring to authority, you become ungovernable, and ungovernable people are the only kind who ever get free. Let's talk about another beautiful piece of psychological warfare, the scarcity mindset. Good jobs are rare. Money's hard to make. Opportunities are limited. Success is for other people, the lucky ones, the connected ones, the ones who had advantages you don't have. Dreams are nice, but be realistic. Lower your expectations. Accept your place. Be grateful for the scraps. Sound familiar? That's not reality talking, brother. That's programming. Scarcity mindset is installed deliberately because it does something crucial for existing power structures. It removes you as competition. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you won't pursue them aggressively. If you believe wealth is limited, you won't try to create it. If you think success requires advantages you lack, you won't develop the capabilities that would give you those advantages. Economic conditioning teaches you that financial struggle is normal, that expecting more than basic security is greedy or unrealistic. This keeps you working for someone else's dream instead of building your own. Educational messaging suggests that advanced knowledge is only for the specially gifted or privileged, which stops you from learning the skills that would make you dangerous. The programming operates through selective storytelling. You hear about every business that fails, but rarely study the ones that succeed. You're warned about relationships ending badly, but not shown the ones that flourish. The narrative is carefully curated to make you afraid of reaching for anything beyond your current grasp. Machiavelli would recognize this as psychological control at its finest. He who neglects what is done for what ought to be done sooner affects his ruin than his preservation, he wrote. But scarcity programming flips this. It makes you so focused on protecting what little you have that you never pursue what you could achieve. Here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Opportunities, resources, and possibilities are more abundant than you've been told, but accessing them requires confidence and initiative that scarcity conditioning specifically destroys. It requires believing you deserve more and being willing to pursue it without permission. The scarcity virus serves one purpose: keeping you small, scared, and easy to control. The cure? Understanding that abundance exists. You've just been trained not to see it. The expert dependency trap, when you outsourced your power. Modern society has created an elaborate web of dependencies that prevent you from trusting yourself. You need experts for everything: your health, your money, your education, your relationships. You've been convinced you're helpless without professional intervention, and that's exactly how they want you. Health and wellness industries tell you that maintaining your own body requires constant professional oversight. They've made you feel incompetent about your own biology, dependent on expensive services for things you could probably handle with basic knowledge and common sense. Financial services convince you that money management is impossibly complex, requiring advisors who charge fees to tell you things you could learn in a weekend. Educational institutions insist that real learning only happens through formal instruction with credentials that prove you sat in classrooms and took tests. They've made you feel incapable of acquiring knowledge independently, even though history's greatest innovators were often self-taught. Machiavelli studied successful leaders throughout history and noticed something. They developed diverse capabilities rather than depending entirely on specialists. They learned enough about multiple domains to make informed decisions and avoid being manipulated by experts with conflicting interests. You don't need to be an expert in everything, but you need to be competent enough to evaluate expert advice critically, to make independent decisions when appropriate, to avoid being held hostage by specialists who profit from your dependency. This requires unlearning the helplessness that's been installed in you. It requires rebuilding confidence in your own judgment. It requires accepting that you're capable of more than you've been told, way more. Here's one of the smoothest moves in the Staying Small playbook, convincing you to postpone your real goals until conditions are perfect. Wait until you have more experience. Get another degree first. Save more money. Wait until the kids are older. Wait until the economy improves. Wait until you feel ready. Wait until. And then you die, with your dreams still waiting. The deferral mechanism is genius because it sounds reasonable. Of course, you should prepare properly. Of course, you should wait for the right time, except the right time is a myth designed to ensure you never actually start. Educational systems teach you to spend years preparing instead of doing. Career advisors tell you to gain experience in existing organizations before starting your own thing, which conveniently provides those organizations with trained employees while the optimal timing for your venture passes you by. Social pressure tells you certain goals are inappropriate for your age, your background, your circumstances. Machiavelli cut through this bullshit with surgical precision. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Deferral transforms achievable goals into impossible ones as circumstances change, competition increases, and your energy and flexibility decrease with age. The game is distinguishing between necessary preparation and fear-based delay, between strategic timing and procrastination wearing a sophisticated disguise. This requires honest self-assessment and the courage to admit when you're making excuses. Because here's the hard truth. Most of the time, you're waiting because you're scared. Not because you're being prudent, not because you're being strategic, because you're terrified of failing, of looking foolish, of discovering your limitations. But you know what's scarier than trying and failing? Living your entire life wondering what would have happened if you'd just gone for it. So where does this leave you, standing at the edge of everything you've been taught, looking back at the cage you were raised in? Understanding your conditioning is just the first step. The real work is deprogramming yourself, questioning assumptions you've never examined, expanding your comfort zone with independence, accepting responsibility for your own development instead of waiting for systems to serve your interests. Start by asking uncomfortable questions. Why do you need permission for actions you're capable of taking independently? Why do you defer to authorities who might lack wisdom? Why do you believe opportunities are scarce? Why do you postpone important goals? Then start small. Make decisions without seeking consensus. Learn skills that reduce your dependence on experts. Pursue goals without waiting for approval. Build confidence in your own judgment through action, not through accumulating more credentials or seeking more validation. Machiavelli wrote The Prince not to create manipulative tyrants, but to show how power actually works, not how we wish it works. Understanding how you were trained to stay small isn't about becoming antisocial or rejecting all guidance. It's about becoming a conscious participant in your own life instead of an unconscious product of someone else's design. The person who understands these dynamics can choose when to cooperate and when to act independently, when to seek advice and when to trust their gut, when to follow established paths and when to burn them down and build new ones. They become the author of their own story instead of a character in someone else's narrative. They reclaim the power they were born with, but conditioned to surrender. They stop asking permission to live their own damn life. You weren't born to stay small. You were trained to stay small because your largeness threatens systems that depend on your compliance, your predictability, your willingness to stay in your assigned place. But here's the beautiful part. Now you see it. You can't unsee it. The cage is visible. And once you see the cage, you can never again pretend you're free while sitting inside it. The only question left is whether you'll stay comfortable in your conditioning or reclaim the power that was always rightfully yours, whether you'll keep raising your hand for permission or finally trust yourself to know when you need to go. The choice for the first time in your life is actually yours to make. So what's it gonna be?